Hello traders, today we are going to be talking about the Apiary Pivots. The Apiary Pivots are a proprietary indicator developed by the Apiary Fund. What the Apiary Pivots do is they show you the pivotal points on the highs and lows based off of price movement and based off of candlestick movement. What these pivots are showing us is if we're basing it off of the horizontal variation, it's letting us know that we have X amount of candles going in the opposite direction from the first candle, letting us know that we have that high or low formed as a new trend is developing. When you go into the setting of the Apiary Pivots, you're going to see those two ways in which they're calculated. They'll be defined as your horizontal variation and your vertical variation. Your horizontal variation is defaulted to 3. And what this is saying is after, let's say, a bullish candle appears, we have 3 bearish candles. Once we have those 3 candles going in the opposite direction, we put that pivot high, since it'll be on the top of the candle since we had that bullish candle before the bearish decrease. Alternatively, we can have our pivot low form when we have a bearish candle, then we have 3 bullish candles going in the opposite direction. That would form that pivot low, letting us know that we have 3 candle price movement going opposite direction, and we have our pivot formation at that point. We also have the vertical variation, which is the price fluctuation. What this one shows is as price fluctuates from a certain high all the way down to a certain low, or a certain low up to a certain new price point, if that variation exceeds a certain amount in the calculation for the pivots, then it goes ahead and puts that pivot high or that pivot low there. The vertical variation calculation is a little bit complex, and it's a proprietary formula that is kept in the code of Alveo. However, the gist of it is it looks at the highs and lows of the market, the open and close on that candle, along with previous highs, lows, opens, and closes, puts all of these different numbers through a calculation, and if it spits out the number equal to or greater than what you have set as the vertical variation in your settings, it'll form the pivot. There's also 2 different types of pivots. There's the pivots and then major pivots. These major pivots can only be calculated based off of that vertical variation, for the reason being that if the vertical variation exceeds that 0.08, which is the default, or whatever number you put in, then at that point it'll put the major pivot because it exceeded that amount by so much. For our entries, if we're using the horizontal variation of the pivots, we'll want to be really careful because we already have 3 candles going in the favor of the way in which we're placing the trade before we even enter the trade. So stop losses become very important if you are using those horizontal variations, because we've already had good price movement in our favor before the pivot formed and before we entered the trade. If you're using the vertical variation, however, that vertical variation appears on the candle in which that price movement had happened, and no later than the candle after, once that high is formed on the previous candle and that current price is now forming. Once we have that pivot high, we have a pretty good idea that the price in the market is reversing directions, and we can go ahead and enter that sell once that high forms, or the buy once that low forms. The exits for the Apiary Pivots are pretty much as self-explanatory as the entries are. If we're in the buy and we see a pivot high form, we know that the market is then reversing directions and we'll want to close out of that buy. If we're in the sell and we see that pivot low forming, we then know that the price is reversing directions, starting to go bullish, and we want to close out of our sell position. The thing with the Apiary Pivots in the horizontal and the vertical variation is that the horizontal variation of the pivots is very similar to the fractals indicator, which we've previously discussed. And so if you want to sort of be able to differentiate between horizontal and vertical variation, you can really take out that horizontal variation by increasing the value in the settings much higher than the default of 3. Something along the lines of 15 or even 20 will make it so that those horizontal pivots don't appear. Then you can add the fractals on, and then you get a definite variation between where you're getting the price reversals from the highs and lows and where you're getting the candle reversals from low to bullish, or bearish to bullish candles, or bullish to bearish candles. If the Apiary Pivots seem like something that you'd be able to use in your trading and you want to experiment with a little bit, you can add the pivots on by going into the top right of the chart, clicking on the indicator icon, which is the 2 line charts overlapping, finding apiary pivots and clicking OK to confirm them on the charts. Additionally, you can change that horizontal and vertical variation so that you don't see one or the other, or you want to see more extreme price fluctuations by making that vertical variation slightly larger. If you found this information useful and want to get notified when we publish one of these new trading tips or strategies, feel free to subscribe to the video. And if you like the video, like it and comment on what other videos you'd like to see, so that way we can produce these videos, and that way you'll be able to improve your trading through the videos that Apiary can put out for you. Thank you all for watching, and happy trading.